Today we were working on a 2009 Toyota Camry. We were doing the front brakes. I can't talk today. We are doing the front brakes. First thing you need to do is get your wheels off. We're doing one at a time and get the wheel off and give you access to the brakes and rotors, and then I put a jack stand there so that it doesn't fall down and crush us. Next thing you want to do is get a, I think it's a 14 millimeter socket you need, but we're just getting off the caliper, the brake caliper, freeing that, and you need to take this off to get access to the brake pads. Not really hard at all. They should be on there relatively they shouldn't be tight at all, not too tight at least. What needs to be on there pretty tight is the caliper bracket, which I'll show you here in a second, but just take those two bolts out and then you have access to getting the brake caliper up and out and free. You'll see me do that here in a second, where I just pull it up and put on top of the splash shield, which sits right behind the rotor. So we're doing the rotor and the brake pads on both sides. We're actually working on the driver's side right here. I'm not going to show you the passenger side because it's just exactly the same as this one. So it's not hard at all. So right here, I'm getting the two bolts that hold on the brake caliper bracket. It's two 17 millimeter bolts that hold this thing on. And actually in the video, you can see that it doesn't take very much effort or pressure to break these things loose. These should be locked down at 100 foot-pounds, which they're not. So whoever did this job last didn't do it correctly. So you just take those out and lets you take the caliper bracket off. The reason you want to take this off is because you need to get access, or you need to be able to pull off the rotor, and that the brake caliper bracket actually encompasses or locks in. Doesn't lock in, but you'll see when you get in there, it prevents the rotor from coming out. So you got to take that off. Like I said, it should be down at 100 foot-pounds when you put it back together. So I got the brake pads and rotors from Amazon. I'll put some links in the description below where you can pick these up. They're actually Bosch QuietCasts. I've had excellent results with these pads and rotors. Probably the best ones I've ever had on vehicles. Right here we're taking the brake caliper. There's hardware on the brake caliper. You have your slide pins, and you also have these are the brackets that the brake pads actually slide in back and forth on. What we're doing here is we installed the new hardware, the new plates, and the kit comes with grease, and you take those, you put the new hardware on, then you put a light coating of grease on there so that the brake pads move nice and easy back and forth as they slide. Right there is the brake caliper pin. You want to go ahead and take those out and clean off all the old grease on them. Just get some brake cleaner, spray them off, wipe them down with a rag, a towel, and then put new grease on there. If you don't get a Bosch QuietCast kit, you can always pick up, I like to use Siliglide from Napa. I'll put a link down in the description as well where you can pick that up as well. But I have had really good success with Napa Siliglide. I know other companies make it as well. But just make sure everything's clean before you put everything back together, and clean and running smoothly, or moving back and forth smoothly. So we'll take the pin, we'll put it back into the caliper here in a second, right there, and just move that back and forth a little bit. If there is rust down there, you can take like a small toothbrush, maybe even like a baby toothbrush, get down there and clean that out with some brake cleaner, and get the rust out if there's rust down inside the hole. But typically, well, we're in California, so we don't see it a whole lot, but maybe back east or the Midwest, you would see rust down there. I could imagine dealing with rust on an everyday basis when working with cars. That'd be a hassle, dude. That'd be a real hassle. So right here, we're showing you how to put the. This is a sensor. What happens is when the brake pad wears down far enough, gets too thin, you'll start hearing like a screeching sound, and that's the sensor that actually does it. That actually makes the noise. We have the new rotors there. Bosch rotors. Very nice rotors. The only thing I wish we had gotten on this vehicle are cross-drilled and slotted rotors. If you can and you have the access to get cross-drilled and slotted rotors, if you're replacing them, it is a very good good upgrade. Muy bien. Highly recommend. So the rotors come with oil on them. We're just taking some brake cleaner, getting all the oil off of them before we install them. Putting the new rotor onto the hub there. And then it's basically, you know, the reverse of installation. There's a reverse of removal. Bringing the brake caliper bracket. Two 17mm bolts hold that thing on. You just work it in place. Take your time. Make sure everything lines up. Line up the two 17mm bolts that hold the bracket on. As you can see right there. Typically I would start with the top bolt so that the caliper bracket has just kind of hangs there and kind of stays in place while you put everything back together. Do not tighten these down yet. You just want to start it by hand, get a couple threads, and then do the other side. So if you do the top first, start a couple threads and then do the bottom. Right here I'm torquing it down to 100 foot-pounds. You don't want that coming apart while you're driving down the road, or bad things can happen and will happen. It'll be a bad day for you if that brake caliper bracket comes off. So after this, I put the brake caliper back on. Actually, right here, sorry, jumping around. I'm compressing the caliper piston using a 6-inch C-clamp. I'll put a link down in the description below of where I can actually show you how to do that. It's not hard. You just take the old brake pad, you put that in front of the piston, and you get your C-clamp and you push it down nice and slowly. Just make sure you check your brake fluid reservoir after doing this. Putting the new brake pads into place. On Toyotas and Lexus, they have on their brake pads, they have these little springs that are constantly pushing the brake pads out. One way that I found how to do this relatively easy, I should say, is I'll bring in the C-clamp, like I'm doing right here. I'll bring in the C-clamp, I'll lock it down, not real tight, just a little bit snug, where it's holding the brake pads in place. I'll bring in the springs face down. The top one faces down, the bottom one faces up, and get those in place so they don't pop out. If you had somebody else helping you, it would make it easier because they could hold the brake pads. But then once the springs are in place, you'll see me here in a second do it, but in one swift motion, I'll hold the brake pads, take off the C-clamp with one hand, and with the hand that I took the C-clamp off with, I'll bring in the brake caliper, and then make sure your bolts are nearby for the brake caliper, because in one swift motion you'll take the C-clamp off, you'll bring in your brake caliper, and then you'll start installing the bolts on the backside so that the springs and the brake pads don't pop out. Kind of a hassle, but I do like this. I do like this design that Toyota has come up with. It just ensures that the brake pads are not riding on your rotor and wearing down your brake pads prematurely, which is a pretty cool feature. So just bring in your brake caliper bolts. There is no specific, well, I'm sure there is a torque spec. I just snug them down. And then before you drive your vehicle, make sure that you press the, or check your brake fluid reservoir. Make sure that's topped off. And then before you drive anywhere, make sure you press your brake pedal 10 to 15 times so that you can have the pistons inside the caliper come out and meet with the brake pads. Otherwise, you'll go and drive and you won't have any brakes. You'll be in a panic situation. So always make sure you press your brake pedal before you drive anywhere after doing any kind of brake work. There's no need to open up the system. You don't need to bleed the hydraulic fluid at all, and the brake fluid. Don't open it up at all. There's no reason to do that. I know guys say, oh, open it up, but there's no reason to. So hope this has helped you out, guys, and if you can, please subscribe to Bundys Garage.